All right, welcome into episode 36 of the Avetts and Beyond. My name is Todd Emanuele, and we have a special guest. It's been a little challenge to get him on to line up our schedules and everything smoothly going here, but we got him here this week. I'm happy to have Ryan Boyles along. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's been a challenge, but we stuck through it and we got you on here. Nice hat, by the way.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, nice hat you got on there. You got
Yeah, I
your
know.
Bonnie hat on. Now,
Yours
for
looks
those
pretty good
watching on
too.
YouTube, I've got my Tanya
Nice.
hat on that I
Yeah,
got from
yeah.
you and your wife. Explain the whole hat thing to me.
Well, you know what? We've been aviding for quite a while now, but my wife and I, we've never got into making our own stickers or anything, but my wife is very crafty. She has made quilts. She's actually made a quilt that I think Scott Avett has in his house, and we gave through Avett Nation once upon a time. So we were trying to think of what could we do for Red Rocks this year, and it sort of occurred to me. We were rewatching all these old episodes of like Parks and Rec and 20 Rock, and the writer on 20 Rock would show up to every episode with a different trucker hat with like a dumb phrase on it. Like bingo, light bulb moment. That's what we're doing. We're gonna put Avett lyrics or dumb Avett references that nobody knows, or just in this case the band's name on a bunch of hats, and we gave out like close to 50 hats at Red Rocks to different people.
That's awesome. My favorite one that I saw in pictures was Wet Wood. And
Yes.
at first I'm like, why is someone wearing a hat that says Wet Wood? And then it hit me that it was a May It Last reference when
Exactly.
Scott's piling the wood up there with Seth and his dad, and he's talking about the wet wood. And it was like,
That's right.
Oh, that's brilliant. I think
Yeah, I had a few like that. I also had Self-Centered Hillbillies. That was one of my favorites.
Yep.
And a lot of those, yes, were May It Last references that were just like things that flew over people's heads. But when, I've watched that movie probably 10 times now, and
right.
And those are some of those moments that are just funniest to me.
Yeah, I watched it again last night because it was the 6th anniversary. Tim Mossberger pointed out it was the 6th anniversary of its theater release. So I had to watch, and I think it was the 848th time I watched it. Something, and that maybe not be official, but it's pretty close. I've watched that a lot, like where I acted out as I'm watching it. Like I know exactly what's coming. And if you've seen it 10 times, it's the same thing. I'm sure you know exactly the words they're going to say, and you could talk along with them. And I
guess it's like memorizing an album, right? It is.
Right. It basically is. All right. So you're a big Avett fan, but I've been doing my Ryan Boyles research. And by doing my research, that means I've been talking to Gans. And
all lies.
Gans says that you're a big Star Wars nerd.
Well, I am. And so I decided for this show that I actually had to reposition my camera here to show my wall of nerddom. And if you zoom in, I don't know how good the picture is. I got a Yoda on the wall over here and a baby Yoda. Actually, this is a Avett like crossover right here. The baby Yoda on the wall there.
Yeah.
The illustration is by Miles Stang, who also does, illustrates posters for Dave Matthews Band and the Avett Brothers, of course.
I see a David Childers painting there too, by the way, and we'll get to David after. I know that.
Yeah. So I've got way too many baby Grogu's. I think I've got one of a kind that was crocheted by an old lady at the flea market, all the way to the giant Funko Pop on the top there. So
that's pretty cool.
I've got an unhealthy obsession, but Star Wars was one of the first films I ever watched when I went to Empire Strikes Back, I think when I was 5 years old, and been hooked ever since.
So are you a bigger Avett fan or a Star Wars fan?
Wow. Coming out with the heavy questions.
That's a heavy question right away.
Man.
Have you ever thought of this before?
It's different parts of your life, right?
Sure.
I mean, Star Wars is very personal to me. I'm a big sci-fi nerd. Avetts is personal to me and my wife. It's something that we discovered together. It really sort of is something that's special to both of us. So, man, gotta say bigger Avett fan at this point in my life. It's just become such a integral part of just personal life, I guess, right? It's not just something you geek out about.
Right. And part of your inner nerd just died a little bit, I think, right there when you said that.
No. Grogu has got a single tear coming down his
you need a tattoo of that or something though.
Yeah.
I have a friend who's a huge Star Wars fan, just like you. But I want to know if you are the same way he is. Like, he is such a diehard fan that when a new trailer comes out and he watches it for the first time, he cries. He gets that emotional about it. Have you ever done that before?
No, I can say with certainty that I'm not someone who would cry at a trailer.
I make fun of him all
Not
the
that there's
time.
anything wrong with that. I
Right,
do think
right.
it can be, there, especially with the new stuff with Ahsoka and all the new stuff. It really is a more mature. I don't know. The shows on Disney are definitely a more mature kind of approach to the whole universe. But
Did
I
you
don't know.
watch Ahsoka? I haven't seen it yet.
Yes, it's really good. So I think if I were to judge and rank all the Disney shows, I would put it up there with Mandalorian.
Wow.
Equal.
Okay, Mandalorian was awesome, by the way.
Yes.
I enjoy Star Wars. My son's a bigger fan than me. He's 17. Just has watched every movie like 100 times and just loves it. I'm not as into it, but I've seen them all, so I know all about it. I haven't seen Ahsoka yet, but my friend Mike, who I was telling you about, who cries at previews, he had a quote yesterday about Ahsoka. He says there are certain Star Warses that hit me right into Star Warses. Ahsoka is one of them, and I thought that was a great line that he put out there.
Yeah, it is. It is, because it's the elevator pitch, without giving anything away, is that they of course had all these animated shows since the movies came out.
Yeah.
That explain the Clone Wars and then what happened after Return of the Jedi with Rebels. All the characters in Ahsoka are the characters in real that have come to life on the screen from the Rebels show. And so there's a lot of
I haven't watched that. I'm bad, but so it brings everything together then, basically.
Yeah, and it's Dave Filoni is the guy behind it all with Favreau, and so he's just knocking it out of the park.
Favreau's awesome, by the way. Just throwing that out there. All right, so Star Wars, we're big into it. You don't cry at trailers. Noted. All right.
Not yet. I'm not saying I won't ever.
No, the next trailer that comes out for what you're gonna sit there and you're gonna have a tear coming out of your eye and you're like, dang, Todd, he did it to me.
You cursed me now.
Made me cry at a trailer. All right, so you wanted to come on because you have stories to tell, and you basically told me little to nothing about them, but I heard they're good. You're a good storyteller, and you've got some good ones to tell us. But I want to know first, before we get into your stories, where. And do you remember where you were when you first, well, you were with your wife, I'm guessing, because you kind of gave that away. But when you first discovered the Avetts and their music, where were you and what was the first song you heard and how did it all take off from there?
Well, you know what? That's actually perfect intro for my first story. So,
okay. There you go.
Let me write up. So the way we discovered them was, I was, she and I bonded over music when we first started dating back in whenever that was, 1990 something. And
are we about the same? How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I just turned 49 last weekend.
I'm 47, so we're basically the same age.
Yeah. So I'm a 90s kid. So U2, The Cure, when I was coming up through high school, NXS, Skinny Puppy, 9 Inch Nails, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Pearl Jam. I mean, all the Nirvana.
Yeah.
All of that music from that era is like what I was into. She was into a lot of the same things. There's a lot of crossover, The Cure, the Smiths, all that stuff. And so here's the story. I had been married about a year. My office mate at work wanted us to go on a double date with he and his wife. And they invited us to go to this show called the Avett Brothers at the Raleigh, North Carolina Museum of Art at their amphitheater. And we were like, not really into country. We're like one of those anything. We prided ourselves at the time of being the anything but country kind of folks.
Yeah.
But we were like, you know what? It's a nice night. It's a nice June summer night. Let's go to the amphitheater and have a beer or two and have a good time. We had no idea what we were getting into. Of course, we show up. He had just told us it was, like punk rock, bluegrass, or what have you. And we show up, and watched the show, and we thought it was amazing. I mean, we enjoyed it. We didn't know what we were looking at because there was so much happening on stage and so many different players. And so just to set the stage, this was right around the time that Emotionalism was being introduced. I don't even know if it was out yet or it had just been released. Joe Kwan was on stage, but my friend didn't know who he was.
Oh, wow.
He was such a new player, I guess.
Yeah.
He had, of course, contributed songs to the Emotionalism album, and that's how he joined the band.
Yeah, that's when it all started.
I thought it was his first show because my friend kind of said that, and I thought it was his first performance or something. Didn't really know who he was. Scott's wife was performing on stage with a fiddle because Tanya wasn't a part of the band at that time.
Right.
And Seth for parts of the show was playing drums. So this is before they had like the full, 7-piece act that we know today. It was very much still experimenting, but they were about to come out with Emotionalism, of course. And I loved all those songs because they played a lot of them. So I really got into the sound. I was enjoying it. My wife was enjoying it. And this is the punchline. We get done with the concert. We walk out in the parking lot and we're like, so what'd you think? My friend said, I hated it.
Your friend said that?
Yes, my friend who loved them and was trying to get us into them. He's like, they've sold out, man. They've got this new sound that I hate. All this new album, it sounds so polished. I don't know what they're doing. Blah blah blah.
They sound too polished.
Yeah, because so he was used to like, I guess the bar room kind of like throw bottles at the stage, jump around, crazy stuff that they were, I guess, known for at the time. I mean, right. I'm probably not describing that very well, but anyhow, we liked them. I ended up going to another show. And then the third show I went to, the second show for my wife, I said, hey, they're going to be performing New Year's Eve in Asheville. This is 2010.
Yeah.
I think, 2010. And we had gone to this first show back in like 2007. So it's not like we instantly just became groupies.
Right.
I said, hey, it'd be great to go to Asheville for New Year's, have a little vacation getaway. Never thought she would like act on it and then she surprised me as a Christmas present with 2 tickets.
Oh man.
We go to Asheville, we go to that show in 2010. We actually it was a 2-nighter and we only went to the 30th, not the 31st. We weren't like thinking that we needed to go both nights or something. We didn't know. And then,
rookie mistake.
It was wonderful though. Like we ultimately fell in love right then at that show, and the rest, I guess, was history. And we started doing a lot of shows.
So, how many shows have you guys been to together, or separately? Have you gone? Have one of you gone and the other not gone?
I guess so. The story goes, she's been to more shows than me. I've only been to at the time that second show that I went to. Mm-hmm. Was the only other show that I went to that she had not gone to, other than I think I went to one. I got free tickets one time and drove down to the Fox Theater in Atlanta with another guy. So I've only been to 2 shows without her. She's been to probably 10 without me, 10 or 12. But the rest are usually us doing road trips and going together.
So what are your totals? How many shows have you guys been to?
Well, she got to 100 in Red Rocks.
Nice.
So on the last night, the third night.
Oh, so she was one of the 3 of them that were there that got the 100 shows. And that's Mike was just talking about that. That's right.
Yep. So that was fun. We rented a house with folks, and then I want to say I don't even remember the exact number. I think I'm around 80. I think I'm around 90 actually. I think I just got to 90 because the only other show we've been to since Red Rocks was we went to Norfolk.
Okay, so you were there. Did you happen to run into Alex Sosler?
I heard.
I think he was keeping a low profile there.
Well, I was with Carol. We were one of those nutty people that went and got on the rail first, and we were with Carol Hines, who was arranging the set list and all that for him. Yeah.
Alex just told me today, actually, I was texting him because people were asking about his book again, that his book is now a bestseller with his publisher for this year because of all the Avett fans that have been buying it up. So I thought that was pretty cool.
That is amazing.
Yeah. So, all right. So 100 shows for her, 90 for you. Are you guys going to New Year's Eve again this year?
Well, yeah, I think short answer is yes. So that's sort of the other thing. New Year's became a tradition for us. So we are, this will be our 13th New Year's.
That's
We
awesome.
haven't been. I think we missed 2011, and then from 12 on, we've been to every single one.
Wow, that's really cool. I'm so jealous of you
it's a
guys.
homecoming. It's a homecoming for the band, of course, and we feel like it's like a no-brainer for us to like make that a thing for us to do since we live here in North Carolina.
Yeah, how far away is it from you where you are?
We are in the Raleigh area, so at this point they're doing those big venues like the PNC here in Raleigh.
Yeah, so you're right there. I mean, it's
we're right there. We'll probably sleep in our own beds that night.
Wow.
In fact, I think there'll probably be a bunch of people crashing at our house.
Yeah, so everyone will be crashing at your house. Great.
But we're both from North Carolina, so my family's in Winston-Salem. Hers is in Rockingham County. So for usually around the holidays, like going to Greensboro or going to Charlotte or wherever they're going to be is like we just build it into the holiday schedule,
That's great that you got them right there. How many have you gotten to meet them? I think you have, right?
Yeah, a few times. So
I posted a picture of you with Scott on the promo for this episode.
We went to the meet and greet that they did after the Hall of Fame because they got inducted in the Hall of Fame in North Carolina. We went to that night. They did the presentation and performed a few songs and down in their hometown in Concord. We met them for that. I don't know. There's been a few times. Actually that's a segue into my next story. So
I was just gonna say segue into your next story because I know you mentioned the whole David Childers thing that you wanted to talk about. Is that what you were going into? Or
what I wanted to tell you about was this crazy one of the best performances we went to. I don't know if you saw this, but they had most people in the cult here have seen it. The PBS special that they did.
Sure.
They recorded it in New York and put it out. I don't know. This has been several years ago. We somehow entered a contest to win tickets to go to something, and we didn't even know if it was a show or we didn't even know what we were entering.
Yeah.
My wife gets a message on Facebook that says, "Hey, we've picked your name. Can you be in New York tomorrow night?" And this is like on a Tuesday.
Oh my God.
And so we were like, they wouldn't tell us what it was either. They were just like,
"Oh, that's great."
They only wanted to give like the prize. You had to be there, of course. They were trying to get audience members for that recording. Wow. But they wouldn't tell us the details because they didn't want to like spoil or have people kind of like somehow scalp the passes or something like that, I guess.
Right. So, but you're in North Carolina and you have to, in the middle of the week, get to New York.
Yes, middle of the week. And we literally go to Manhattan kind of thing. Right.
Wow, man.
So we on a dare and kind of just like, we don't want to not miss whatever this is. We just said, sure, we'll be there. And so literally we had two kids at the time that were going into probably middle school age. So we actually had
Home Alone.
Well, we were kind of. We did import our my mother-in-law to keep them for the day.
There you go.
And check on them. Keep the house in order. I jumped in the car that morning. We drove through all the New Jersey Turnpike, paid all the tolls, just went as fast as we could, basically. And we get up there and we get to the building. And they said it was at the McKittrick Hotel. That's where it was recorded. We had no idea what that meant. It's some kind of vaudeville theater most nights.
You were at that McKittrick Hotel show?
Yes, that's what the show was.
That is one of my favorite YouTube videos to watch.
And it is one of the most awesome. Yeah, it's a great recording. So we didn't know that's what it was. We show up and there's just an old man and a young hipster-looking guy sitting on a park bench in front of the venue. And we were like, is this the right place? Are we like, is there going to be a line? And he's like, no, you got to leave and come back at 8:00. And we got up there by like 3:30.
Oh man.
It's like, what does that mean? What do we do? And he gave us advice for somewhere to go.
Well, plenty to do in New York City for
we went
5
to a
hours.
Place.
Yeah.
We came back, got in line. Long story short, we were one of the first 10 people to get in. We felt like we were going into some kind of weird, I don't know. It was like a weird venue place to get into, because it was like down all these dark corridors, and you had to go up an old elevator that had one of those like turnstiles that you like it had an operator in like a velvet jacket that was like, it felt like you were entering a horror movie, because they like pull the metal grate closed, and then he had like a whole shtick that he was doing, and then he takes us up and there's like sparks flying, and he's like asking us weird questions like, are we happy with our lives and all this.
Oh my God. So you're like going into the Twilight Zone.
Right. So we were like, I really don't know if we're in the right place. So we get up there, they take us in the theater, they walk you to a table, and it was very much like what you see in the video. I don't know if you pan out in the audience, it felt like you were going to like MTV Unplugged, like,
sure,
like those videos back in the day, right? Little cocktail tables and stuff. We got put off to the left-hand side of the stage. So over, I guess stage, is that stage left or right? I always get it reversed, but we were beside Bob. Off the
stage left then, right? Or I guess if you're on the stage, it's stage right.
And we were in this like booth kind of by ourselves. They come out, they do the performance, they talk a little bit. Like you said, the performance was wonderful. The room was so small that it felt like you were, like I said, in one of those like MTV Unplugged videos where you're like right there.
You were right on top of the stage.
And the stage was like the size of the size of my desk. It was so tiny, and they were packed on there. And it was so small, in fact, that Pete, the stage manager, he came and sat at the table with us.
Really?
So that he could physically be within arm's reach of Bob, and he was swapping the bass for the stand up for his electric bass.
That's crazy. So are you in the video? I got to watch it.
So
again.
Yeah, you can see us if you peek, there's a few moments where they do like side shots across the stage, like back where Mike is. And you can see my big fat head over there somehow. Yeah.
Well, I watched that video probably 20 times, and I will be watching. If you
pause it, you'll see us over there, but not really a clean shot.
Yeah.
Because I think the camera was right there in the corner beside us. Two cameras, but Jennifer Carpenter was like sitting behind us, and we were like, oh wow,
you had better seats. Better seats than Jennifer Carpenter.
Well, man. I don't know if they were better or not. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
It's a story that gets better every time I tell it. So the last thing I'll say is we started talking to Pete.
Pete's a great guy, by the way.
Figured out, we didn't know who he was at the time.
Yeah.
Turns out he's their stage manager. He does the lighting, all this stuff. Turns out he's from Greensboro, where I was born and where I grew up and for a certain part of my young life. And so we struck up a conversation. At the end of the night, he hands us the set list, and he had been marking on it, and he had marked like different like little notes on it and stuff. So that was just a nice thing, nice experience, right?
Where do you have that set list right now? And can you show it to me?
You know what? I don't.
Can you send me a picture of it?
I will send a picture. All he did was do marks of like, he was putting E's on it for like where the electric switch would be.
Okay.
It wasn't a drawing like he does now, but
yeah, well, right. That's old school.
I think this is before he was really doing that kind of stuff. I could be wrong, but again, like we had been to a bunch of shows and it wasn't registering, that was a thing.
That's a great story. My God.
So if my wife was telling the story, she would add one more thing. And this is so they did Murder in the City and Ballad of Love and Hate, right? Band leaves the stage. Each of the brothers do their thing. During the ballad, Scott actually came over and sat at our table with us.
Oh,
and he was like whispering to Pete, and like we're at a cocktail table where it was like you and me right here. Like it was like whispering and talking to Pete. And my wife said it was the most torturous moment of her life because she didn't know she was supposed to pay attention to Seth singing ballad,
right?
Like 5 feet away, or she really wanted to make eye contact and say something to Scott.
Right. That's funny. That's crazy. That version of the Ballad of Love and Hate that Seth does on that show, that's one of the best versions of that song. It's so amazing. Yeah. It's the intimacy of the venue.
That's the torture of that moment, because we're sitting there going, "Don't act stupid, don't act stupid." That's Scott, and then there's Seth singing ballad.
That's so great. Now, my favorite part of that show is when they're doing on stage talk and talking about a father's first spring. Is it
Yeah.
father's first spring or a
Yeah.
father's first spring?
Is that the one where they were arguing about the title? Like, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, Le Father's First Spring, he says at the end. It makes me laugh every time I see it.
Yeah.
How cool that you were there for that. That is
Yeah. And that was a complete fluke. And then walking out of, so they send us down a hallway, and then it felt like we were going through a cable car that was somehow in the middle of the building, and then down a freight elevator, and then we came out of a velvet curtain. And it was like, if you've ever seen the movie Eyes Wide Shut, where like all the people are like doing weird stuff and acting, and it felt like we had come out on stage somewhere where we weren't supposed to be. And then we come out, then we literally go through the room, come out these two sliding doors, and we're literally in the alley with nothing happening. Like in the alley of the street, like outside the building.
That's like a movie too. And then you're just alone in New York City. Like, what are you supposed to
do?
Well,
yeah, they were in New York. It's like 10:30 at night, and I'm like, well, hey, we got a couple of hours, and we were gonna drive back home that night. Like,
we had to work the next day, right?
We had no plan. I had to work the next day, so I'm like, hey, we can drive down to Times Square and like see whatever.
Had you ever been to New York before at that point?
No, I had, but my wife hadn't been to Times Square, so I was like, hey, we'll go check it out. And she's like, nope, I've had enough. I think I've had everything I can handle for one night. We got in the car and left.
Yeah, going to Times Square at 10:30 at night is probably not a great idea.
Well, that's true, but I'm just saying, like, her point was like, I got to hang on to this.
Oh yeah, no, I get.
We were still trying to process what had just happened, if you know what I mean. And
sure, that's crazy that you were just sitting at a table with Scott and you couldn't really interact with him.
Well, like, I mean, what are you gonna do? Like, right. it's I'm not one of those, like, I'm trying not to be a psycho about the band, but
yeah, still a cool moment though.
They are just people who put on their pants one leg at a time, after all, right?
And they are just people, and they make no bones about that. And that's just the way they are. And they've been walking around Concord, going to soccer games with their kids, and they're just people who happen to be amazing at what they do and have an amazing fan base. But they are just people. All right, so we're running out of time. This always goes so incredibly fast, and we still got another story to go. And I have to hear about the music that you picked for the episode, because we got some great songs for the show. Tell me the third story. You wanted to tell a David Childers story, right?
Well,
you need a Reader's Digest version, I think, of it.
It's less of a story. I guess it's more of a teaser. Maybe I should come back on another time.
I would love it. So
I kind of have become friends with David a little bit. My wife and I both. He did a takeover of the historic ing that's in Hendersonville outside of Asheville this spring, and it was like a 3-day thing where he played the whole weekend at different occasions. He played one night in a venue with the band with the Serpents. I don't know. I just love the guy now. I feel like he's a treasure. He's obviously a gifted songwriter, and I just find him fascinating because when he performed at the beach at the last getaway that the Avetts had, we hung out with him, had dinner a couple times, and just got to know him and his wife a little bit. And they feel like they're family now to me, because you got that North Carolina background, you got that North Carolina sensibility, and we just identify with each other a little bit, I think. So anyhow, the story, and I don't have the whole story, but he just started talking about how it's explained in May It Last that Bob got the band out on the road to become a touring act, or else we're not going to go anywhere, that kind of thing. That's the way the brothers explain it. Well, I think there's some kind of tie-in to Robert Childers, David's son, also being friends of theirs. And a lot of those early shows, they were playing together or practicing together or going to venues around the area, around Concord, around that whole vicinity of the state. And the way that David kind of alluded to it was like Robert was also one of those early people that was like pushing them to do things. And
he told me that on the show. He said that Robert introduced him to the Avett brothers, and that's how they got together.
That's true. That's part of it. So I'm not telling the story right, but I just love hearing all these little tidbits of how things come to be. I think it's like, for me, it's very interesting to kind of understand the creative process, because even though I work in technology by day, I am a very like I'm just hungry for like all kinds of creative outlets, and I'm just fascinated by all of this stuff. And I've come to really respect David and just love what he does with music. And I just think for me, it's just interesting to see the path that all these things take, and the way that sort of styles and music just kind of organically flourishes in these different ways. So that's I just think that's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, and his artwork, I love his artwork. And on
Oh,
top of his
that's
music,
the other. If you the blue skull there, that's one of his too. Yeah.
yep. I have, how many do I have 5 pieces of his now that I chit chat with him every now and again. And
Yeah.
he's just one of the nicest people I've ever met in my life.
He really, really is.
It really is just such a talented guy.
And
I say this all the time. How is he not in that North Carolina Music Hall of Fame? We
Oh,
got
that's a great
to get
question.
him in there. How
That's a
is
great question. I don't know
There's
what the
people
rules
from
are.
American
Yeah.
Idol that are in that Hall of Fame over him, and that's not right. That's
Yeah.
not right.
Well, I don't know what the criteria is. I will agree with you. I want to give a plug for he performs with David Nyblock, a guitarist.
Mhm.
He's not always in the act but they're a lot of times they'll do a two-piece together. The last time I saw David was actually at a listening room that's new down here in Dunn, east of Raleigh, called the Bird's Nest. The two of them performed together. David Nyblock, holy crap! As a guitarist, it's like a whole nother version of David's songs when they perform together, just the two of them.
That's cool.
And the connection is that my father somehow knew of David Nyblock from way back. Like he was I guess a known kind of local musician up in the Winston-Salem area, around that vicinity, from when he was younger. So kind of had this weird connection of like, hey, I know that guy. He looks familiar. And then my parents ended up coming to the makeup New Year's that they had back in March.
Yeah. Yeah.
And David and the band performed.
That's very cool. All right. So let's see. We got, what do we got left? 6.5 minutes.
Oh boy.
You picked 8 songs. Very quickly, tell me what they are and why you picked them.
Okay. Well, let's see here. For me, I like a lot of different kinds of music. For me, what I was looking at with the Avett songs, I guess it's really hard to pick your favorites, as you know.
Because they change. I know that. Your
They do
favorites change all the time.
but for me, like that's a really hard question. But for when I look at sort of the ones that I really I don't know, the ones that really light up something inside me. So When I Drink has been one of my favorites for a while, just because I love the lyrics. I love like the way that I've tried to sing this song, and it's really takes a lot of, I think, training to have the amount of like lung capacity, and like I don't know, to really belt that out is a challenge. So when I'm singing to myself in the car or the shower,
I was gonna say, are you a musician? Do you perform, or is it just in the shower?
I'm not a musician by any means now. I did perform, or I was a musician when I was a student.
Okay.
In the marching band, if you
Nice.
if you call that, but not a singer by any means. And then Die Die Die, I love it just because to me it's one of those emotionalism songs that I can't get away from. It gets me excited every time I see a show. Slight Figure, I just love all the comedy of it.
Yeah.
Slight Figure of Speech. It's also one of those songs that has sort of evolved over the years with the way they perform it, with the way they have the interludes and all the stuff they do on stage, and Paranoia in B major. I love that one. Just again, emotionalism. I actually should have just put emotionalism on here and just said emotionalism top to bottom, because it's one of those that is the go-to for me.
Great songs there. Now you got 4 other ones too from different artists.
Okay.
Tell me about those.
U2 is my original favorite band, I would say, before I met / started following the Avett. So for me, that's just from my youth. I'm going to see U2 at the Sphere when they do their residency next month.
Oh, that's cool.
In Las Vegas, the giant Sphere thing.
Yeah, I'm going to Vegas in December. I can't wait. I've never been there.
We're excited about that because the last time I saw U2 was in Carter Finley Stadium here in Raleigh, like, gosh, 15 years ago or something.
Wow.
The Cure is sort of a band that is like love songs between me and my wife. So Fascination Street or Pictures of You or anything from the Disintegration album, honestly, is stuff that's kind of like love letters, I think, between me and my wife from just that era when we started dating. You know, and Bahamas is somebody we just discovered. This guy is from Canada, and he started he was touring, kind of co-headlining with Dolls. We discovered Dolls, you know, pretty recently. Became fans of Dolls. They've been around a while, but
yeah,
they were performing together, and we went to a free show here in North Carolina, and he's just awesome.
This song that you picked, I had never heard it before. I was putting your music together before we got on here, and I'm like, oh my God, this song's great.
Yeah, it's very he's got a lot of like swagger and bravado, but it's also soulful and bluesy, and it's another one of those things where you can't describe what it is, but it's awesome.
Like the Avett Brothers.
Exactly. And maybe that's the connection here, because if we ended up with Cake and talk about Short Skirt Long Jacket, it's another band that you can't really describe, that is very unique, that has,
isn't it funny how
arrangements or different instruments that you wouldn't expect in pop music or what have you, and it just is like unique. And I think for me, I'm always craving like that little something extra, and I think that's what I love about all these bands.
Right. Isn't it funny that music that you've listened to your whole life, different genres, different everything, it all kind of melds together.
It does.
The older you get, you notice that everything has a connection. And it's just funny, like things that I've listened to a long time ago, I see now like the Avetts have performed with them. I'm like, you're kidding me. Like it all comes together in somehow, some way. But very cool. Very nice selection of music. I can't wait for everyone to hear the songs. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun. It always goes so fast.
I know, right?
I'd love to get some more stories together and come back on. This was fun.
Surely I will. I have more to share.
Awesome. All right. Well, I really appreciate it. And one more quick question. We have a minute left. Do your kids like the Avett Brothers?
You know what? Well, when we first started back in, like I said, going like to all the shows in like 2012, 14, 15, 16, they were just they got into music because of the Avett Brothers. So my son taught himself guitar. He started out on Guitar Hero and decided he wanted to play one for real. So we bought him a guitar for Christmas, and lo and behold, those are, in addition to all the, like, you know, 90s rock or what have you, or hair metal or whatever that he was learning from Guitar Hero, they did both get into the Avett Brothers. And I had this fantasy for a while that they would become like a boy brother group called the Boyles Brothers, and you know, but it didn't really
work out
that way.
Awesome that they like him though.
Yeah.
All right, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, take care.